My husband asked me to this on a fishing trip. It was supposed to be a simple weekend escape, nothing more than a quiet fishing trip away from the hustle and bustle of daily life. The boat swayed gently in the calm waters, the horizon bathed in soft pinks and oranges as the sun began its slow descent. Lily and her husband, Mark, had been looking forward to this trip for weeks. Fishing had become their little tradition, a way to reconnect, relax, and leave the stress of their busy lives behind. But something about this particular trip felt different to Lily. There was an intimacy in the air that neither of them could ignore. They had anchored the boat in a secluded spot, a place Mark knew well, far from prying eyes and the noise of other boats. It was peaceful, the only sounds being the gentle lapping of water against the boat and the occasional call of distant seagulls. Mark busied himself with setting up the fishing rods, but Lily was finding it difficult to focus on the task at hand. Her mind wandered, watching the way Mark moved, his strong hands working deftly with the lines, his quiet focus. There was something undeniably attractive about how comfortable he was in this setting, strong, capable, yet relaxed. Lily felt a warmth spread through her, one that had nothing to do with the soft summer breeze. She glanced at Mark, but he didn't seem to notice the way she was watching him, lost in his own thoughts about the catch they might haul in by evening. Her gaze lingered on him, his sun-kissed skin, his broad shoulders flexing under the soft cotton of his shirt, and she felt a familiar ache stir within her. It was a desire she hadn't expected to feel so strongly, not here on this simple fishing trip. But there it was, undeniable and growing stronger with every passing minute. The quiet, the solitude, the beauty of their surroundings, it was all so perfect, almost dreamlike. Lily couldn't help but be drawn into her own thoughts, fantasies she had suppressed for weeks now bubbling to the surface. Her body responded almost instinctively to these thoughts, her breath coming a little quicker, her skin tingling with anticipation. She glanced at Mark again, biting her lip, wondering if he could sense what was going on inside her, but he seemed oblivious, still focused on his fishing lines. The temptation was too much. She knew it was a bit naughty, a little risky, but that only seemed to fuel the fire inside her. After all, there was no one around for miles. Slowly, she shifted in her seat, leaning back against the edge of the boat, her eyes half closed as she let herself drift into the sensations she was feeling. Her hand slid beneath the loose fabric of her shorts, her fingers tracing the outline of her own desire as she moved in rhythm with the gentle rocking of the boat. It was slow at first, tentative, but the more she gave in to the feeling, the more she let herself get lost in the moment. Her breath hitched and she bit down on her lip, trying to stifle a small moan as her fingers moved faster, the sensations building in waves. She was so lost in her own pleasure, so consumed by the feeling, that she didn't notice Mark had turned to look at her. His fishing rod had been set aside, his eyes now focused entirely on his wife, watching as she moved, as she gave herself over to the moment. For a while, he simply watched, his breath catching in his throat, his pulse quickening as he realized what she was doing. There was something so intimate, so beautiful about seeing her like this, so open, so vulnerable, yet so in control of her own pleasure. His heart raced, his body responding to the sight of her in a way he hadn't expected. He could see the flush of her skin, the way her chest rose and fell with her quickening breaths, and it was almost too much for him to bear. Mark asked Lily to remove clothes and play with herself using her fingers. She used her 2 fingers to enjoy with herself. Mark was standing and enjoying the scene. Unable to resist, Mark moved closer, his hand brushing lightly against her arm. Lily's breath coming in shallow gasps as she looked up at him. There was a spark in his eyes, something primal, and it sent a fresh wave of heat coursing through her body. He didn't say anything at first, didn't need to. His touch, the way he looked at her, it spoke volumes. Slowly, he leaned in, his lips brushing against her neck as his hand replaced hers, his fingers moving in rhythm with hers as he began to explore her body. Lily shuddered at his touch, her breath hitching as his lips moved lower, trailing soft kisses down her neck and over her collarbone. She arched her back, pressing herself into him, her body aching for more, for the feel of him against her. The moment was charged with an intensity neither of them had felt in a long time. It was as if the world had faded away, leaving only the 2 of them, lost in the sensation of each other. The boat swayed gently beneath them, the water lapping against the sides as they moved together, slowly at first, savoring every touch, every kiss. Mark's hands roamed over her naked body, his fingers tracing the lines of her hips, her waist, and her thighs. He could feel the heat radiating from her, the way her body responded to his touch, and it drove him wild. He kissed her deeply, their tongues tangling together as he pulled her closer, his need for her growing with every second. Lily moaned softly into his mouth, her hands threading through his hair as she pressed her body against his. The tension between them was sensational, every touch, every movement sending sparks through her body. She wanted him, needed him, and there was no stopping it now. Mark's fingers brushing against her skin, causing her to shiver. She gasped, arching her back as his hands moved higher, caressing her breasts, teasing her nipples. The sensation was almost too much to bear, and she moaned softly, her body trembling under his touch. He pulled her closer, his lips trailing kisses down her chest, his hands never stopping their exploration of her body. He could feel her trembling beneath him, her breath coming in ragged gasps as he took his time, savoring every moment, every touch. And just like that, the world outside ceased to exist. It was just the two of them, lost in each other, lost in the desire that had built up between them over the years. Every kiss, every touch, every moan was a testament to the love they had shared for so long, a love that had only grown stronger with time. As the night wore on, the sun finally dipped below the horizon, casting the boat in soft shadows. But neither of them noticed. They were too lost in each other, too wrapped up in the passion that had ignited between them, a fire that seemed impossible to extinguish. The fishing trip that had started as a simple weekend escape had turned into something far more, an unforgettable night of love, passion, and intimacy. As they lay together, tangled in each other's arms, the boat rocking gently beneath them, they both knew that this was a moment they would never forget. As they lay together, tangled in each other's arms, the boat rocking gently beneath them, they both knew that this was a moment they would never forget. The sky above them was now dotted with stars, a serene contrast to the intensity of the emotions they had just shared. The gentle breeze off the water cooled their flushed skin, and they held each other close, their breathing slowly returning to normal. Mark kissed Lily's forehead, his hand still resting on her hip as he whispered, "I don't think I've ever felt so connected to you." His voice was soft, filled with a tenderness that made Lily's heart swell. She smiled, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I feel the same way," she murmured. "It's like everything else disappeared for a while, and it was just us." The warmth of their bodies blended with the cool night air, and neither of them wanted to move, not wanting to break the magic of the moment. They lay in a peaceful silence, wrapped up in each other, their thoughts intertwined with the love they had built over the years. The boat continued to sway with the gentle currents, and the world around them seemed still, as if it, too, was holding its breath in reverence for what they had just shared. Eventually, Mark shifted slightly, tilting his head to look at Lily. His fingers gently traced along her jawline, his eyes reflecting the soft moonlight that now danced on the surface of the water. "You know," he said with a playful grin, "this fishing trip turned out a lot different than I expected." Lily chuckled softly, lifting her head to meet his gaze. "Different in a good way, I hope." "In the best way," he replied, his voice full of sincerity. "I didn't know we needed this, but now, I can't imagine anything else." Lily smiled, her heart fluttering at his words. She had always known that their love was strong, but this moment, this night, had reignited something in both of them, a reminder of the passion they still had for each other, the bond that had only deepened with time. The everyday stresses and routines had melted away, leaving only the two of them, raw and vulnerable, yet stronger together than ever. As they lay there, wrapped in the warmth of their love, the stars overhead twinkling like tiny promises of more moments to come, Mark leaned in and kissed her softly, as if sealing a silent vow between them. "I love you," he whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. Lily's heart fluttered again, and she smiled against his lips. "I love you too," she whispered back, her voice just as soft, just as full of meaning. For the longest time, they remained in each other's arms, neither speaking, simply enjoying the quiet intimacy that had settled over them like a comforting blanket. The water continued to lap gently against the sides of the boat, a steady rhythm that seemed to echo the peaceful beating of their hearts. They had the best night of their life. Mark was on top of Lily, under the comforting blanket. Lily's legs were around his lower back. They were in perfect position as Mark started to rub his rod on the cave. She was moaning, and she wanted him so bad she pulled him in by her legs, and Mark's rod was all inside her. Mark started to give her the pleasure by slowly increasing the pace of his movement and gave it all. Lily was enjoying and moaning until Mark everything inside her, making her all wet. Then both lay there, wrapped in the warmth of their love. For in each other, they had found everything they needed. Love, passion, and the quiet certainty that no matter where life took them, they would always have this unbreakable bond, this night on the water, and the knowledge that they would never forget it. As they sat in the stillness, wrapped in each other's arms, Lily could feel the weight of the moment sinking in. She knew they would never forget this night, not just because of the physical connection they had shared, but because of how it made her feel so deeply, so completely seen by Mark. The gentle sway of the boat, the sound of water lapping against the sides, the glittering stars above. It all felt like a dream, a soft, perfect night that they had somehow created together. She shifted in his arms, nuzzling her face against his chest, inhaling his familiar scent. Part sea breeze, part warmth. Mark held her tighter, as if anchoring her to this moment, this place. The boat drifted lazily on the water, carried by the soft currents as though it too wanted to prolong their time in this bubble of intimacy. "I'm not ready for this to end," she whispered against his skin, her voice barely audible over the soft sounds of the night. Mark's hand stroked her back slowly, his fingers tracing gentle circles that made her shiver. "It doesn't have to," he murmured. "We're right here, and the world can wait." His words hung in the air between them, full of a tenderness that made her heart ache. It was in these quiet moments that Lily realized how much she cherished the stillness with him, the simplicity of being in his presence without the distractions of everyday life. The hustle of work, the noise of the city, even the demands of their busy routines. All of it seemed distant now, almost irrelevant. Out here on the water, in this shared solitude, it felt as if they had found something that had been buried under the surface for far too long. They stayed like that for what felt like hours, neither of them speaking, just holding each other as the boat rocked gently beneath them. The stars above shimmered brighter, their reflections rippling across the water, casting an ethereal glow over everything. It was the kind of night that felt infinite, as though time had slowed down just for them, allowing them to savor every touch, every breath, every heartbeat. They sat there for a while longer, wrapped up in the warmth of each other's embrace, the stars above twinkling like silent witnesses to the love they shared. It felt like they were the only two people in the world, floating in a sea of their own making, content in the knowledge that they had everything they needed right here, in this moment. As they neared the dock, the lights from the marina came into view, casting a soft glow over the water. It was a gentle reminder that the real world still existed, that they would have to return to it soon enough. But for now, Lily wanted to hold on to the magic of the night for just a little longer. Mark helped her out of the boat, his hands lingering on her waist as she stepped onto the dock. The cool night air brushed against her skin, but she didn't mind. Mark's warmth, his presence beside her, was all she needed. They had created something unforgettable on that boat, a moment of pure love and connection, a night that would forever be etched into their memories. And as they made their way home, Lily knew that no matter where life took them, they would always have this night to look back on, a reminder of the love that would carry them through anything. Mark steered the boat back towards the shore, the motor humming softly as the lights of the distant marina began to come into view. Lily sat close to him, her hand resting on his knee, her head leaning against his shoulder. They didn't need to speak. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the unspoken understanding that this night had changed them in some subtle but profound way. As they docked the boat and stepped onto the pier, the world seemed to return to its normal rhythm, the sounds of distant waves, the chirping of night insects in the nearby woods. But something inside them both had shifted. The love they had always known was now layered with a newfound depth, a renewed passion that would carry them forward, not just through the quiet nights on the water, but through every challenge life might throw their way. Hand in hand, they walked back to their car, the fishing trip now just a beautiful memory, a story they would look back on with fondness, a night they would always treasure. And as they drove home, the stars still twinkling above them, they both knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in their love story, one filled with even more intimacy, connection, and the promise of endless moments just like this one.